Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Waymakers, the podcast that talks about women who are forging their own way in this world. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Waymakers. It's been an interesting week. It's been an interesting day. We've got a new Prime Minister, a woman, exciting. That's kind of where I think it ends. Not that I'm going to share any political affiliations here, but I saw a really funny tweet. It's kind of mean actually, but I'm not going to repeat it, but it kind of gave me some inspiration, and I'm going to discuss my feelings on imposter syndrome today, and whether or not it's something that we discuss obviously, and is it actually a syndrome? Now, I'm not a mental health professional, but I have experienced feelings which I would describe as imposter syndrome, and I've had friends who've described the same feeling, but is it actually real? So imposter syndrome was formally identified in 1978 by two psychologists who performed a study which focused on high achieving women, and they found that despite a number of outstanding academic and professional accomplishments, women experienced what they described as the imposter phenomenon persistently, believing that they weren't as bright, or that they had fooled other people into thinking that they were bright or capable of doing those jobs or being there. And I think this is really similar to what I would describe as my feelings of imposter syndrome, where I've been, promoted into a new role, or I've been put in a new space, and I'm born out of anxiety. I think is like a lot of times where I've just been so nervous and not sure if I could do the job and worried about being quote unquote found out. And I think this is something that I definitely have found with friends, especially women, or only women. I don't think I've ever heard a man describe a feeling of imposter syndrome, but I could be wrong. Please let me know. And it's quite sad because I think a lot of times we often find ourselves questioning our abilities when really and truly, if we're there, it's because we're meant to be this, because we've got the right qualifications and the right experience, and someone has thought that we can do that job. And if one person thinks so, then surely someone else will too. And at the very least, we must think that. And something that actually spurred me on from talking about this was I actually got around to listening to Meghan Markle's podcast, Archetypes, this morning. I thought it was really interesting. She was talking to Mindy Kaling, who I love, who's also a South Asian woman. She's half Tamil, which is incredible. And she asked her about whether or not she'd actually ever felt like she had imposter syndrome. And Mindy Kaling, which really surprised me, which is awful, and actually considering what she said, I think made me rethink it a lot more, was the fact that she responded with no. She's like, I worked for the office for 8 years, and we did 22 episodes a season. I had the experience to write my own show, and actually that's such a fair point. And I think when we talk about imposter syndrome, a lot of the feeling is that we don't deserve to be there, or it's born out of anxiety when you're faced with either a new role or a new promotion, and the anxiety that kind of leads to, am I actually good enough to do this? Can I do this? And I will say this, I have kind of fallen into the trap of thinking I had imposter syndrome. Sometimes, I wouldn't say, I was about to say sometimes it's valid. No, it was never valid. I'm not going to say that. It was never valid. But sometimes it's because I didn't stop to take stock and be like, no, I've actually worked really hard to get to this point. I've got the right qualifications, I've got the right experience, and I'm intelligent enough to be here. And I think, unfortunately, I think that's like a big reason as to why a lot of women, especially black and brown women, feel that, because when they look around, they don't really see people that look like them and you might not hear people who speak like you. And there's a worry that actually you don't deserve to be there. And that might not necessarily be just an internal feeling that you've feel that insecurity on your own. It might well be that there are external forces that feed into that, whether that could be misogyny or racism or classism. There are sometimes systemic bias that can feed into you feeling like you don't deserve to be somewhere or that you're not good enough. Whilst it can be quite easy to say that this is just a feeling of anxiety, you should change your approach. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't reiterate the impact that systemic bias can have when you've had to struggle to get roles or be recognised within your own field, and when you know you're capable but you're surrounded by people who, or you have line managers who may not feel the same despite evidence to the contrary. That can take a real hit to your self-esteem and therefore make it harder for you to have your own self-confidence when it comes to actually fulfilling a role, when you're in a role that you're actually capable of doing. And unfortunately, that's like a harder thing to deal with or to get to grips with. And whilst we have less control over it than our own outlook, it is something to be aware of. And actually, if you are in a senior position or you've been able to move up within your industry, I think there should definitely be a sense of you've probably had to work harder and be smarter to be there. And if anything, you are more deserving of a seat at the table, for want of a better phrase. And then there are moments where you look around and you see and you work with co-workers who genuinely make you think that imposter syndrome is BS and I can be here. If they can be here, I can damn well be here. And I think that's, for me, has been the overwhelming experience. And I think we sometimes make the mistake of, because something has a name, that we automatically feel like we should ascribe to it. And from listening to the conversation between Meghan Markle and Mindy Kaling, they both discussed and described not ever feeling that feeling and then feeling some sort of guilt for not, or being like, should I feel that? Which then led me to ask myself, is imposter syndrome something that we, in a twisted need to feel humility or portray humility in the face of success, feel we need to say we or expect to feel? Is it an extension of sometimes women often feeling that they can't be boastful or be proud of their success in a way that their male counterparts have no issue doing? Or do we feel that we might need to tone down our behaviour? And I think that could be a very small part of that, but having experienced such feelings of anxiety or genuinely feeling like I don't belong somewhere or that I shouldn't be here because I'm going to get found out because I don't know if I could do this, I do know that it's real and it's a valid feeling. But my worry is that by giving it its own name, and I want to flag that it's not an actual mental health condition, but it has received a lot of focus in recent times. And has that given it too much credence? Has it given us something to latch on to? Or is it just the perfect way of describing that feeling that we can have when we walk into a room or a new situation and feel really alone? Having discussed all that, I wanted to talk about ways of actually getting yourself out of that mindset. I mentioned earlier going through your experience, validating yourself, giving yourself encouragement by talking about the fact that you deserve to be there. Someone's already decided that you deserve to be there. But also just going through your experience, the fact that you can do that job and that you have the requisite qualifications and experience, And that's just a way of reminding yourself that you deserve to be there. This isn't something that I say lightly, but sometimes the phrase fake it till you make it comes to mind when I'm in a new situation. And if I genuinely feel that lost or feel that uncomfortable, I just have to say, okay, I will figure this out. I'm just going to fake it till I make it. And 9 times out of 10, you don't have to fake it. I don't really think I've ever faked it. I've actually figured it out because I have the right experience and the right level of intelligence to be able to do that. And you do too. We all do. And no matter what field we're in, we have the right skills. And if you don't, then it's a good way of actually identifying ways to grow those skills. And maybe that's why you're in that role. Part of a new job is gaining new skills and new experiences. So maybe don't be so hard on yourself. You're not always expected to be able to hit the ground running or know everything the minute you get there. And the new experience is just that, a new experience. So cut yourself some slack. If this feeling persists, something I would say is to speak to a friend, or if you can, speak to a mentor, speak to someone that actually knows your industry or knows the job that you do or knows you, to be able to discuss your feelings and actually just be a sounding board or a voice of reason for you. But if you truly feel like this is something that you're not sure that you can go ahead with or that you're struggling with, then I would definitely seek professional advice and speak to a therapist to help you overcome your feelings of inadequacy or help you identify those feelings that are causing you to feel like this. So, in conclusion, whilst I do think imposter syndrome is real and is a valid expression of that feeling someone can have when they're in a new situation that they don't necessarily feel fully prepared for, I think it's really important that we don't expect to feel that. I think it's really easy to go into a new job or new role and feel like you have to feel unprepared. It's okay to be confident, and actually sometimes that's a good sign that you feel confident that you can do this job. But also be mindful of the fact that you're not going to know everything on the first day or the first week or the first month, and give yourself some grace to be able to learn and grow within a role, and to make use of all the resources available to you, whether that's a mentor or a business coach, whether that's a friend or colleague or a line manager. It's completely normal to feel anxious in the face of a new situation. And I think this feeling can be amplified if, when you look around, you don't see peers who look or sound like you. And sometimes it's not an internal feeling, but a response to external pressures. So I think we should be mindful of that and act accordingly, whilst also remembering that your experiences have brought you to this point and you deserve to be there. On that note, I bid you adieu. And a reminder, you can sign up for a free 15-minute consultation with me if you are in need of a business coach. I can help with interview prep and helping you identify and get to your career goals. If you've got any dilemmas that you want me to discuss on the podcast, email me at guy3@nbg-coaching.com.